All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Mike to Mike. You like that? I got my friend Ken Baker, who is a pastor in the Bronx, and I'm glad to have you here, man. Welcome, Ken.
It's great to be here, man. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
Dude, okay, so Ken, tell me how long you been pastoring out there? It's been a while.
We actually celebrated our 10-year anniversary this past Sunday. And it wasn't exactly the way we envisioned our 10-year anniversary, but nonetheless, 10-year very happy years. God has been very faithful.
Dude, I got this weird thing where I don't remember how long people are doing stuff. So like Josh, I just got done talking to Josh last week, and Josh had been pastoring for 3 years. And I'm like, oh, I thought it was like a year and a half. And then I realized I've been telling people for a year and a half that Josh had been starting a church like a year and a half ago, you know? So like to me, I was like, oh, dude, in my head, you've only been there 5 years. But man, it's been 10 years.
Crazy. Absolutely nuts. Yeah.
Did you start the church?
We did. We started the church from scratch 10 years ago. We sure did. We're in our third building now, but we're very blessed, thankful for what God's doing.
Tell me a little bit about how you started the church and how that all happened. Like, how did God? Okay, so here's me, right? I remember a few years ago, I was in between ministries, and someone was like, "Hey, just go start a church."
Right.
I'm like, I don't think you just go start a church. Like they made it sound like the easiest thing. I have like so much respect for people who go and start a church. To me, it's like it's got to be a calling. You know?
Absolutely. It's very clear that God called us here. Although when I was in college, I actually thought that our family, my wife and I at the time, were going to be missionaries in Central America. And God used a series of health events and different things to lead us to a place in Connecticut where we were serving in a church for several years. And God really used that time for me to know Him and to find Him. And I was always wanting to be active and busy in ministry, and God used that season of our life to slow us down to get to know Him. And then that was about 60 miles outside of New York City. And then it was in that time that God spoke to us and led us to plant our church. And then that when we began our church in 2010, we began in a veterans building here in the Bronx. And we were there for a couple of years, and we called the place home, and it was a blessing to start with. But as the church continued to grow, it became very frustrating, because the veterans building started doing rentals, and they'd have parties on Saturday night, and we'd come into a mess on Sunday, and all kinds of stuff on from the party stuff, the alcohol and everything all over the stage and stuff like that. And we were very worn out. But at the same token, it's New York City. We had no money, nowhere to grow, and no plans to move. We just wanted to move. And that building was located right on the Long Island Sound. And a long story short, Hurricane Sandy.
What does that mean? Is that like prime territory? Is that a good spot?
The Long Island Sound is just a large body of water that essentially connects the Atlantic Ocean. And so basically, Hurricane Sandy hit. And when Hurricane Sandy hit, the waters came up in our building so much so that it knocked out I don't remember the size of it, but it was a 20 or 30-foot hole in the side of the church. And at that, the church building we were renting. And at that moment, obviously, we had to move. And God used Hurricane Sandy to help us relocate. We ended up at that time, we were paying $1,200 a month for the building, and that was all we could do to afford that. And God led us to a building that was $4,500 a month that I was scared to death about, but God had already begun to provide, and by faith, our church made the decision, and it's just spectacular what God has done and how He's led us.
So that was your second building then?
That was building number 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then tell me how you got into your third building.
We were there for 3 years, and then we fulfilled that lease and began looking for another property. And our church altogether was 900 square feet, and so it was tiny. But
Oh my gosh, dude.
Yeah, it was ours, and we called it home, and we were very, very grateful for that. And so we began looking for a building, and through just incredible circumstances, we found a auto parts store just a few blocks from where we were, in just high visibility area, same neighborhood. And we reached out to the owner, and he worked with us in a great way. And for 3 or 4 years, we called that building home, and it's just amazing. And but again, we, in the last 8 years, we've paid about $400,000 in rent. And
wow.
We've just been praying and praying and praying, and asking God to open a door for us to be able to purchase a property. But we're still relatively a new church plant, and very, very little money in the bank. And so no bank wants to loan someone like us money. And about 2 years ago, on one of the darker days of our ministry, my wife and I had just lost a baby, and she had just gone to the hospital, and it was just a very tender day for us. So we came home, and the phone rang, and I really didn't feel like answering it, but I did, and it was the owner of our church building. And he said, I just want you guys to take care of our baby, referring to his building. He said, I'm ready to sell it to you. And that was a wonderful thing, except that we knew that no one was going to finance it. And he said, no, but I want to finance you as well. And
oh man,
just miraculously, things began to transpire. We had, at that time, we had saved about I guess $30,000 or so. And he said, I'm going to need $150,000 down, and then we'll be able to finance this. And we brought it to the church, and the church prayed about it, and a number of friends, churches, pastors.
I remember seeing that, like, on social media. I remember praying for that, bro. I remember that.
Got involved, and so we've owned this building for a little over a year now, and just pretty miraculous.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's cool, man. So tell me what it's like in the Bronx, bro. Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in like a city? Are you a city kid?
I grew up most of my life in Peoria, Illinois. And so
just like the Bronx.
Not as big as the Bronx.
Okay.
and not even close.
Hold up, man. Hold up.
But
there you go. You're good now. You're good now.
Sorry. I was getting a phone call. I can't, no matter what I turn on the phone, it won't stop phone calls.
Right.
I had some pictures I was going to share, but it looks like only the host can share them. I'll send them to you privately afterwards.
Yeah.
Of just some crazy things, because people always ask, what is, now you can't share this one, but I can send you this one.
Okay.
What is going up in the Bronx? One of our neighbors got kicked out of his house by his wife with nothing but shoes on. And so I have a picture that I'm going to send you. It's modest, but barely, with 6 police officers and my neighbor, which I was the weirdo with the camera that day. But anyway,
yeah.
It'll bless you. That's what it's like growing up in the Bronx. I mean, it's concrete piled on top of concrete, and you know, the stereotypes are true. I mean, there's a lot of crime, there's a lot of unemployment, there's a lot of craziness. But we are at a place that it's chaotic in the city, but it's not as intense as some of those areas in the Bronx. And relatively speaking, our family is safe. Our garage has been broken into a couple of times. We've had a car window in our car knocked out a couple of times. But we've not really dealt with a whole lot of craziness and things like that.
How many kids you got?
I have 3 girls.
Your daughters are the best, man.
They're awesome.
I have my daughter. We have our first daughter, and I love it, man. I love it. Yeah, she's 1.5 years.
So my oldest is going to be a senior this coming fall. And
oh my goodness!
Yeah, I'm an old man. I'm an old.
I'm not far behind you. I just got a late start. So
Yeah.
how does your family, what's it called? They've been there for 10 years now with you. So it's just like,
It's really all they know. So I have 3 daughters and a son as well. My daughters were born, 2 were born in Indiana where we lived at the time. And then one was born once we moved out here to Connecticut. And then my son was born 6 years ago here in the Bronx. And that my kids love it. I'll be honest with you, we live in a very small house. We're very thankful for our house, but we have talked many times about the problem is that if we move 20 minutes away, we're in New Jersey and we're fighting tolls and traffic. And so we can't go there. If we move a little bit north of where we are, it's Westchester County, and it's just mega money and property taxes on a house are north of $20,000 a year, just property taxes. And so we have the possibility of moving about an hour north of here and getting a much bigger house. But my kids just absolutely are against that because they love the city so much. And again,
cool.
Right now, the season we're in is different because of the whole COVID-19 thing. But I mean, they love everything from hopping on the train and just the proximity of Times Square and Manhattan, and we can be there. And it's a weekly event. We have 2 Sunday services, one at 11 and one at 2. And then me and my oldest 2 daughters, we hop on the train and we go to the city and go to Starbucks and just solve the world's problems. And we just love city life. And all my kids do. It's that they all say that as they get older, that they're going to remain living in the city once they return from wherever they go to college.
Really?
And that this is home for them. So
that's cool, man. So what led you to the Bronx? Like, I know so many people who are just like, that would be a little bit intimidating to them.
It is.
You were already like, I'm going to be a missionary. So you were already like, you got a little bit of that hardcore streak in you already, like I'm willing to go where God wants me to go. Right.
There was part of that pioneer spirit for sure. But when I was serving in Connecticut, I volunteered and spoke one Tuesday night at a juvenile boys home. And it was a very light security type thing, and just preached the gospel one night, and a kid from the Bronx got saved, and he said, "Would you visit my mom?" And I'm like, "Sure." I'd been to a Yankee game. That was my only time visiting the Bronx before because,
I love this story already.
The Bronx is just
I love this.
It's not a tourist destination. I mean,
sure.
Outside of Yankee Stadium, or if you want to get some legit Italian food, there's no reason to go to the Bronx unless somebody owes you money. And so I went. I saw his mom that next Saturday. And I spoke with her and had a good visit with her. She was more interested in my kindness to her son than she was my gospel presentation to her. But when I left that visit at her house that afternoon, it was just one of those times that I knew God was speaking to me about planting a church. Cool. And it was about 18 months after that before we actually planted. Our family went on deputation for about 11 months and raised some support. And then for the first 2 or 3 years, we did everything wrong, just so you know, and learned a lot of lessons. I mean, we rolled up our sleeves and we went to work, but we had to unthink some methods.
Yeah. I reached out to Josh. I got a bunch of friends who want to plant churches. And I'm like, hey, Josh, I said, cause it's fresh on your mind. Can I hook you up with my friend? You can talk to him. He's like, sure. I'm just going to tell him everything you're not supposed to do. Make sure I made every mistake.
If I could only revisit 30-year-old Ken, I have so much to tell him.
You were so smart then, right? You feel like the older you get, it's not that you feel dumber. You're just kind of aware, man, I really don't know everything. I kind of have.
I feel dumber. I just feel dumber for real. I'm a mess for sure. Yeah,
that's funny. All right, so then you guys go out there, you start the church, but that's how it happened right there. You just met some kid, and then God started working on your heart.
And God started working on our heart, and then we and it's funny because it was all just led by God. I was trying to, my intention, especially my presentation on deputation, when I was telling churches what we were going to do, is we were going to the hood, and that's where we were going to plant a church. And I had looked for dozens of buildings. And long story short, there was just one particular day I was driving around the city, and I needed a restroom. And I saw the Veterans Building, which is building 1 for us. And I went in there to use the restroom. And 20 minutes later, I walked out with a signed contract.
The Lord works in mysterious ways, boys and girls.
Yeah. And literally, the Lord just used finances, to prevent me from, because there was just a level of stupidity or stubbornness, whatever you want to call it, that I would have just gone to the wrong place. And I know at that time.
Because you know what God's plan is.
What's that?
Yeah.
I had it all figured out.
Right.
I just needed him to get on board with it.
Hey, God, catch up. I already got the plan.
I just needed him to catch up because I figured it out. And there was just so many times I needed to slow down and trust him.
Dude,
sure.
Can you talk a little bit about, because like so many of my teenagers, they ask me, they're like, Brother Mike, how do you know when God's telling you to do something? And so, and I think it's a lot, and I've been there, like, trust me, me and you, we had a lot of the same training. It's just like, we got it figured out. We know what we're going to do. We got so much bravado. And then all of a sudden, like, God has to be like, all right, come on, man, let me show you, And I also think it's a lot of God's kindness, the way that he's been, super gracious to me, just to kind of be like, okay, look, I know you think you have it figured out, but I'm going to steer you this way. You're not going to realize I'm steering you, but so what do you think, what's a good answer for that? Like, how do you feel like God has shown you this is what you need to do and kind of led you? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, even in my teenage years and in my early 20s, I had great intentions. I mean, if you were to ask me when I was 18, 19, 20, I would have said, I want to be a missionary to Central America. And in fairness, I prayed about it. But it was also one of those things where it was just my declaration. It was never, and I took a survey trip. And I would also argue that I was deeply burdened for Central American countries. But that was not where God was leading me. And I was very, very confused. To kind of open that story back and peel it back a little bit, on that survey trip that I went to in Guatemala, I came back sick. And it wasn't deathly ill, but my breathing wasn't right. It was in that time that I lost all my hair. And things were just very confusing to me. And for me personally, what had happened is it was determined that I had breathed in some volcanic ash, and long term, it would not have worked for my health to live in Guatemala. And looking back, I see God was closing that door. And I was so confused because I was this ambitious person that wanted to do God's will. There wasn't this streak in me where I wanted to just satisfy flesh, but there was also, sadly, something inside of me that I wanted to do God's will, but I wasn't careful. I was comfortable sharing his glory with him. And God needed me to know him and show me that knowing him is more important than doing his service. And again, as a kid, I grew up praying and reading the Bible, but God needed me to know him in a deeper way for sure. And that stretch from when the door was closed for us was serving in Guatemala, which we never ended up there. To me, transitioning to Connecticut was a very discouraging time for a mid-20-something-year-old kid that went to a Bible college and had zeal, excitement, all that stuff, and it took me to a place of discouragement and God, are you going to use me? Not realizing that God was preparing me.
That's so funny, right? Like, if it doesn't work out the way we think it is, automatically God put us on the shelf. You know what I mean? Like, that's how we think. I've totally been there. I get it.
So one of the things that God had me do is I started killing bugs. I carried the title assistant pastor in Connecticut, but the church was small enough there that I wasn't a paid employee, and so I was a exterminator, and I did well with I worked with orc and pest control, and I grew with the company, became a manager, and did very well. What I didn't realize was it wasn't the bug aspect, but there was an element that God needed me to learn that I didn't know in regards to administrating a church. And I had this excitement of serving God, but I didn't have the tools to be successful in the Bronx. Now, last year, we closed on a $950,000 building. I mean, and just miraculously, somehow, we own real estate in New York City. And that would have never happened had God not sent me to the school of orc and pest control to get that business sense that I needed to be financially accountable to our church, but a good steward of what he's given us and what he's entrusted us with. And the biggest lesson that I needed to learn was to wait on him, because I'm a naturally impatient person. I want to jump to conclusions. I want to get everything done yesterday. I have no problem.
Same.
I mean, putting my head down and just ramming life through, and then apologizing if I didn't get something right. And God was teaching me I've got to slow down and to wait on him. And it's just one of those things that when he has led us, when he's opened certain doors, again, I could take you to story after story of buildings that I would walk around. I'd take my shoes off. I'd lay my hands on the walls. I would just claim them. I would tell God that we could grow his church. And
this
God
is it right here, God. If we have this building, yeah.
I mean, there was a Jewish synagogue that was available 7 years ago for $250,000 that I felt like in my prayers, I was letting God know it was there as if he wasn't aware of it. And looking back, if we were in that building, the growth of our church would be stunted so bad. And God was preparing not only me, but also preparing our church. And so in the times that God has opened these doors, it's been very clear that it's been him and not us.
That's okay. Yeah, that's where I'm trying to get my teenagers to understand this, right? And I understand, because when you're a teenager, it's hard. Like I remember what it's like to be a teenager, and it's hard to, you just want to do stuff. You just want to accomplish. What's the next thing? What are the things I'm supposed to do in order to be a good Christian and all this stuff? And so I'm really trying to tell them, like, my goal is not to get you to become something. Like, I don't have a goal for any of my kids to be missionary, pastor, whatever it is. My goal is for them to know Jesus.
That's right.
That's it. Like, if you got a relationship with God and the Holy Spirit, like, he's going to show you where to go.
That's right.
And, sadly, that's something that I've had to learn in the last, probably 5 years or so, where I was the same way. It was just like, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to do this thing. I was a very, very, very busy person. But God started, working on stuff. My wife had health problems shortly after we got married. She had rheumatoid arthritis really bad. She's already had both her knees replaced. So she has titanium knees. You know that song? I am titanium. Yes. That's her song right there.
That's awesome.
I call her RoboCop. She gets so mad. I love it.
Great. That's great.
But, like going through all of that, and being part of a very busy ministry, and just having to be like, I can't do everything, because, like God used that to make me slow down. Like I had to make a choice, and I was like, well, I think I want to be there for my wife. And that was like one of the best things that ever happened, because it slowed me down. And it was like, okay, well, you're not going to be able to do everything. And I don't even think God wants you to do everything. Like, it's not all on you,
Right. It's very true. For me, I had to get to the place where I told God, okay, if what I'm supposed to do is to kill bugs for the rest of my life, I'm okay with that. And it was shortly after that God said, okay, now let's go plant the church.
Isn't that funny?
But so many teens, and it's I'm talking to my daughters, especially about this now. It's, I want to go into forensic science. I want to this. I want to pursue that. And what's most important is pursuing God. And goals and dreams and ambitions are great as long as we give God the veto power to change those things in our life. And what was great for me is knowing that God had something great for me. I just had to see his will in his time and not dictate to him what my schedule, what my plans were.
It's so funny. It's like, God, please lead me this way.
Right.
Like, that's so much of that was so much of my prayers when I was, early 20s, same as you. It was just like, God, here's what I'm going to do. Make it happen.
Yes.
Make me successful at this one thing. And then it was just like, I was like hitting my head against a brick wall. Like, so much stuff wasn't happening.
Yes.
And finally, when you're just kind of like, okay, God, well, I think I trust you. I'll just do I'll do what you want me to do. You just show me and I'll do it. And I'm good with that. And then it's like, he starts opening doors, and then you start seeing amazing things happen. And then also too, it's like how you value what an amazing thing is, like what success is. Like, all of a sudden it's not, I preached to 1,000 people or this conference. No, it's just, I did what God wanted me to do. And you get so much, that brings a fulfillment, a joy that you just did what your Father wanted you to do.
That's right. For me, one of the things that I wish I could tell Ken 10 years ago in my late 20s or early 30s was, one of the things that I had is I had people that I referred to as friends, and I had a lot of them. Mm-hmm. And there was just a season that I went through that I lost a lot of them. And for a short season, that hurt. But what I didn't realize was God was freeing me. And I had security in a lot of those friendships, and God wanted me to find my security in him. Now, looking back, I realized that those weren't real friendships. It was more, we could call it different things. But God used a series of events to grow me. And there was people that were acquaintances in life that I felt very, very close to. But the reality is, God wanted me to get closer to him. And from that, now the friendships that I have are true, genuine friendships, as opposed to something much, much flakier than that.
Now, why do you feel like you had so many friendships drop off? Was it you had been changing as ministry perspective? Was it just different things?
Yeah. I don't know how much we want to talk about that.
Not too much, but kind of.
Yeah. But that's the angle that it went, just based on some, there's nothing we changed doctrinally wise or anything like that. We just wanted to keep our eyes on Jesus and our focus on the Bible, and that's the basis of that. If we're not careful, things that were extra biblical that are not necessarily in the Bible, that are more traditional for some, I broke a few of those traditions, and obviously that was offensive to some, and it damaged some relationships. But in so doing, it freed me, and it helped me in those hurt, dark moments to really study Scripture. And as we made decisions as a family, as a church, as an individual, that we were going to follow Christ, and it was very, very freeing for us.
Dude, it's hard to find. I have a pastor friend. He's older. He's older than you or I, and he's a very traditional person, but he completely understands that other people are different. And I mean, he is one of the biggest encouragements to me. It's just, he's super old fashioned, super old school music, like everything, wears a suit and tie everywhere. But I picked him up from the airport one time, and I've got like a plaid shirt like this. I got my Nikes on. We're at Applebee's eating, and we're just talking about the Bible. And he's super cool. Like, you don't even, he's not judging you because you're, it's encouraging when you have people like that.
Love it. I absolutely love it. And what I've learned is that there are going to be people that have tradition standards that are stricter than me, and people on that the pendulum swings the other way. What's most important is our focus is on Christ and
Yep.
His. And that's it. Romans 14 has really, really helped me just to know and understand that kind of stuff. Because if I'm not careful, I'm the Pharisee in the story, and I'm the one that wants to judge somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been there, and I have been the Pharisee in the story.
Dude, what's something you can tell my teenager? What's some good advice you can give my teenagers? What's been on your mind? What's been on your heart? Besides everything else. What? What'd you say?
I said, open the country.
I know, man. Dude, how is that for you, man? Is there any hope in sight for New York or what?
As far as our church goes, we're probably not going to open soon. But we have a lot of patience because we've gone through a pretty rough stretch. We've lost a member. We had 5 other members in our church.
I saw you posting about that.
We 5 other members that lost a parent or a sister. And again, in most cases, it's a senior and people in their late 70s or early 80s, but it's still a rough season. We had 18 positive tests in our church. 2 of them were kids, 5 and 6 years old. And so it's been a brutal 2 months for us. But what that's done is bought us time that I know that there's a lot of people, really frustrated about things not opening. And so because of the way it hit us, there's more patience that we all have. And I don't know how long it's going to last with the summer coming and things like that. But for now, the patience is there. But kind of connected to that, and maybe a word of encouragement is just something that I'm very passionate about. That if I could tell every teenager is go for a run. And
I want you to talk about your running. Yeah, man.
One of the things that again, I was going to share pictures. I didn't realize I'm not the host, so I can't share them. So I'll send them to you personally. If anyone asks for them, they can take a peek at them. But
I'll post them in. Whenever I share this, I'll post them on our social media. Yeah.
When I'll send you a bunch, then you can just kind of pick and choose. But I had some New York stuff to share too. We live in New York, and so we've seen Jay-Z, we've seen Shaquille O'Neal. I mean, my wife and I saw Michael J. Fox at a Nets game, and we have fun with our celebrity sighting. It's always fun to me and our kids.
That's fun.
Crowds don't lie. If there's a crowded restaurant, you want to go there because the food's good. If it's an empty restaurant, well, and again, things have changed recently. But if there's a crowd in New York, it means there's a celebrity around, and so we've learned our way to dig through crowds. But one of the pictures I want to show you is when we started our church, I weighed 290 pounds, and today,
oh my gosh, bro! I knew you were big before, but 290.
I weigh 290, and today I weigh 178. And
all right, now you weigh less than me, man. Come on, dude. All right, I gotta go. We gotta cut this short.
Well, I would trade places with you right now because currently I'm in a air cast on my right foot.
Oh yeah, man.
I'm uber depressed, and I'm in a bad place mentally. But hopefully this gets off soon. I'm actually training for the Boston Marathon. Boston Marathon was moved to September, and it's supposed to begin this week, and I'm already going to be behind. So
when does your cast come off?
It could come off in the next week or two, and then I got to rehab slowly a couple of weeks before I get back into it.
All right, wait. So I want you to talk about, you weigh 290.
Yes.
And you were just a good old boy, just eating whatever, man. Pasta, whatever. You didn't care. So
here was the breaking point. As a young church plant, 4.5 years ago, we had a couples event on Valentine's Day, and I was at the church all day, and so I was our guest speaker that night, and so my wife brought an outfit for me and got the church all ready for a nice dinner, and I put the shirt on that she bought, and the buttons didn't close. And I got up and I announced to the church the next day. I said, I done messed up. I've taken this thing too far. I'm dieting. It started already. And from that moment, I started running. I haven't eaten any beef or pork since then.
Are you serious?
Part of my diet, I still eat chicken and fish.
Okay.
Part of my diet is I eat 5 bags of carrots a day. And what that does is that eliminates cravings of snacks and everything else. So anytime I snack, it's just on carrots, and there's just nothing to it but water. And then I just began to run, and I ran some 5Ks and 10Ks, and ran some half marathons. And then this last year, I was able to run the New York City Marathon, which is just a major, mega bucket list event. And now I'm getting ready for Boston here in September. But all that to say that running wasn't just good for me in losing
Sorry, I'm
weight.
sending a text. I'm not paying attention.
No, that's all right. Running wasn't just good for me for losing weight. It was good for my mind. And you know, I fell into a rut of working hard. And I just by nature was a very stressed person. And
Hold up. You're froze.
that they
Hey,
appreciate
go
who
back
I
a little bit. The last thing you said was by nature, you're a very stressed person. And then you cut out a
Yes.
little. Sorry.
Okay, by nature, I'm a very stressed person. But the whole running thing is just slowed me down and opened my mind, and far greater than me losing the weight. It's helped me to think. It's helped me to process things. I've been able to slow down, and it's just been so helpful to me for sure.
Now, okay, so were you running before? Were you an exercise? Were you a gym rat before at all? Before you decided, hey, I'm going to lose some weight?
Not like I am now. I would run a mile or two, you know, now. And again, the level that I've done the last couple of years, you know, I'll run 7 miles a day and then 18 on the weekends. And I was never doing something like that. That's kind of just staying in marathon shape all the time. You know, I would do a mile or two a couple of times a week, but I obviously took it to a whole new level.
Dude, I hate running. And I was actually talking to a counselor, and I was just, you know, just from some of my personal things I'm trying to figure out and deal with. And they're like, you need to start running. And I'm like,
So,
I hate running. And they're like, you need to start running.
my encouragement to absolutely anyone and everyone, whether boy, girl, man, lady, whatever, is find your thing. For some, it's a bike. You know, for some it's running, for some it's walking, for some it's karate or judo or martial art or something like that. You know, for others it's something, you know, maybe it's just lifting weights. But there's something that everyone can do, that they can find their happy place. And it's just so great for the mind. I know it's been great for our church. Our leadership in our church can go back to the difference in me, my demeanor, my personality. You know, when I never had enough time for running, for the cardio, and turns out how impactful it was.
So it's like, I don't have enough time to do this. Then you say, I'm going to make the time to do it. And then it makes you a better person, which makes you more productive, whatever, you know.
More effective, productive, thinking, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, for sure.
Dude,
For sure.
I did not know you lost that much weight. That's bonkers to me, man. That's over 100 pounds, bro.
No, I'll forward you the pictures. They're pretty wild.
Now, okay, so what would you, so, you know, with some of my kids, that is a concern for them, is their health and stuff like that, you know? So was that like a big thing for you? Was just like, man, my health is not good. And were you nervous about starting? Because I know a lot of my kids will be like, I want to work out, but they just like, they're very nervous about starting like a physical workout routine.
Yeah, I was very nervous about starting. And it took me late in my 30s before I ever took it serious. My problem was, and our church still mocks me for this, but I was so out of shape. For the first 3 winters of our church, we ran the air conditioner in December, January, and February because I sweated so hard when I preached. And in my mind, I thought I was this great man of God.
I'm just preaching up a storm.
Preaching up a storm. But I was just out of shape and had no control over myself. And the church still mocks me for that. That, I mean, they would come in blankets and has and starts. And it was my badge of honor. I'm like, man, I preach a storm up. And yeah, little did I know I just wasn't taking care of myself.
I do think people need to take that seriously. I have not been. I've kind of fell off the wagon. Back in like 2007, 2008, I was really into like MMA and stuff. And then when I was working at a college, working at the college we came from, and so they kind of they gave me like duties in the gym. Well, that just meant to me like, oh, I'm just gonna hang out at the gym all day. So I was working out like twice a day, like 4 times a week sometimes.
I feel like one of my brothers worked out with you, right?
Yeah.
Herbie or Carl, one of them, or maybe both of them.
Maybe both of them. Yeah. I remember one of them tagged me hard.
Yeah.
One of them hit me stinking hard. I don't remember which one it was.
Kirby, he's still in the military. He's a bad dude. Yeah, I'm sure it was him.
It's probably him. Yeah.
I'm sure.
So I started this and everyone was like, oh, he wants to teach us how to fight. And I'm like, no, I just want training partners, man. So I just had like all year-olds who wanted to knock my head off. And I'm like, oh, this is going to motivate me, you know? But I was in the best shape of my life. And it was so good for me. I had a lot of stress. That was when my wife's rheumatoid arthritis was like really, really bad. And just having a balance and to be able to like, you know, get some of that energy out, it helped me keep a lot of my sanity, man.
So what I've loved about the running community is that it's not competitive from a standpoint of you're trying to beat somebody. Is super encouraging. And what I've seen and what I've experienced, most of my kids are into running as well, is that when we see someone that is not in great health and they're able to run or speed walk or just move a half a mile, everybody gets behind them. And we understand it's a milestone. And you know, for some, their best may be an 18-mile run on Saturday afternoons. For others, it may be six blocks, whatever it is. But the encouragement was really there from the running community. And that was just so incredibly awesome to me, that because I always grew up in competitive sports, trying to beat the other team in baseball, football, or basketball. And running is much different in that it challenges you to push yourself, but your own. And again, the Apostle Paul uses so many of those analogies in Scripture that are just fascinating, that I never really related to them until I started running. But we're not, you know, as Christians, we're not competing with somebody else. Right. As a runner, I'm not competing with anybody else. I'm just trying to finish my race. For some people, their race is an 11-minute mile. For others, it may be a 5.5-minute mile. For some, it may be a 16-minute mile. But it doesn't matter. You run your race, and the same is true in life. Why we don't compare our spiritual gifts or culture or anything else where we're set in life with each other, but we run the race that God's given us.
Do you feel like when you were a teenager, I know I thought, and maybe even in college, like it was always like a mistake that I made was, oh, this person, he could speak better than me. You know, being a public speaker was very important to us. This guy could preach better than I can, or this person seems sharper here, knows this. Don't you feel like that's a trap a lot of people, especially, I know young people fall in this, like they compare themselves all the time. And I feel like it's a huge snare.
It's a major trap. And especially for me, for example, there are pastor friends that I have that are gifted speakers, extraordinary behind the pulpit. I mean, they can just take a passage and expound on it and deliver it and just captivate people's attention. I enjoy preaching, and I know I'm gifted in that area, but not the way others like that are gifted. On the other side, I know guys that can just commit to study for hours and hours and hours and hours, and they can kind of care less dealing with people. And again, there's an exaggeration.
Yeah. No, I know what you're talking about.
Quoted in there, but for me, I could spend every hour, every day with people and listening to their problems. When someone passes away, I have zero problem sitting at a bedside, you know, and just sorting through. And again, the Bronx dynamic, there's constant relational chaos and, you know, fractured homes and those challenges. And my spiritual gifts are really there, that I'll never be the speaker that some are. And I still need to study as
Sure.
the Word of God tells me to. But one of the best things that helped me grow as a person and as a pastor was realizing where my spiritual giftings are. That I'll never be that preacher, but I know that God specifically prepared me for where I am right now. And it's not unique to a pastor that every person that is saved is uniquely gifted from God. And it's important that we all identify those gifts, not just for them to make us better, but to see how we can use them to bring glory to God and for his kingdom.
Yeah, I look at so much of what I thought was what I should be.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, I need to be this and that. And it was just like I couldn't squeeze myself into that mold because that wasn't the mold that I was supposed to be in anyways, you know? And so I remember when I just finally got comfortable with like, okay, these are the things that God's gifted you with. They're not bad things. They're really great. Don't be mad because you don't have the other ones. Like that guy over there, he probably doesn't have your gifts. Like God made you to do what he wants you to do for his kingdom. You're going to be fine, man. Don't be like, that was a good day for me, man. It took me a long time though.
That's awesome. I'm the very same way. That's where I struggled. When we first started our church, I just scream and holler and throw a fit. And I thought I'd just preach the paint off the walls. And what I had to grow into learning was, that didn't impress anybody. It didn't impress our church. They wanted a shepherd. And God wanted me to be a shepherd. And I had to find who I was in Christ. Because
I'm a youth pastor right now. And so, I'll have a couple people call me and be like, younger guys I know that might have been students or something when I was at the school. And they're like, hey man, give me some advice about being a youth pastor. I'm like, just care about him, man.
That's it.
Like you'll be fine. God will show you everything else. Like, 10 years ago, I would have had like, oh yeah, I got my 20-point list. Here it is. Like I would have had it ready to go. And I'm like, now it's just like, just care about him, man, and do what Jesus wants you to. You'll be fine. You'll figure it out. They're like, that doesn't help, man. I'm like, no, it does.
Don't overthink it.
Dude, so that's cool, man. I'm glad that so much is going on. I'd love to have you on again, man, because I feel like you got like a crazy bunch of stories from the Bronx that I haven't heard yet.
Oh, we have the stories for sure. We'd love to share. Yeah, we run pretty deep in regards to stories for sure. We'll have to do stories and pictures.
We'll figure it out next time. Hey, let me ask you this one last question because I like to ask this to everybody. Who is, outside of Jesus Christ, who's the Bible character, like your favorite Bible character, the one you like to study the most? Who's the one that you keep on, the Bible character you keep on going back to?
Joseph. Joseph is and I guess because there's so many types of Jesus, and we're actually, we have a Saturday Bible class that I'm teaching right now and doing it online right now. But there's just so many types of Christ pictured in the life of Joseph. And it's fascinating. It's been fascinating for me as we've studied the Old Testament just to see Jesus throughout the Old Testament, the types of Christ and the pictures.
Mine is Absalom. Just because I'm like, I want that story to change every single time. Like I like him.
That's awesome.
It's just like, come on, dude. Like you don't have to go down this path. But it's like he never gets it.
What's wrong with you?
Well, it's like I see so much of like my spirit in Absalom sometimes, where he's just like, he's convinced he's right. It has to be his way. He's really stubborn, but you're not right, dude. You're not right, man. That's my guy. And then Dustin, I talked to Dustin and Josh, and they both were like Peter, and they were both like, yeah, because Peter's an emotional mess, and they just love it, cutting off fools' ears and stuff, and then like
that's right.
5 hours later denying Christ. It's like. I love it, man. All right, man. I want to thank you so much, Ken, for being on. What is something that my teenagers could pray for your church and your ministry or your family, whatever? How can we pray for you?
Pray for God's wisdom as we reopen. And again, we're hearing it could be mid-August before we even start a soft open. But I don't want to be irresponsible and do it too soon, especially because of the health ramifications. But I also, in that process, don't want to hit the pause button and just spin our wheels because this is a big time. I mean, we have teenagers here too that are getting ready for college, and we've got 3 months to influence them. The summer is a unique time, and we want to be effective with the gospel. We want to see lives changed, and so just pray that God would give our church wisdom as we navigate through this time. And then if you want to pray for my foot as well, pray that this stupid air cast gets off me.
How did you hurt your foot, man?
I tore a tendon, and I'm not proud of this, but the Boston Marathon was postponed in April, but I ran a virtual marathon at the end of March when it was postponed. And I was feeling so good the next day. So I ran 26.2 miles. The next day I got up and ran 14 miles, and I should have recovered. So it's a self-inflicted gunshot is what it is.
All right, man. So we'll be praying for your church and for you to have wisdom, and also wisdom about like, hey, maybe I should run like 40 miles in 2 days. We'll be praying for that, man.